It's time for the Margin Matters Minute with Money Man Jason Brown.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Jason Brown. I have a special guest today joining us, Mr. Jim Martell, thank you, Jim, longtime expert realtor. And Jim is going to join us. He's going to share the up-to-the-minute real estate market report, as well as the very trending topic that everybody's talking about is the real estate market, is the real estate bubble about to burst? So Jim, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, I appreciate it, Jason. Anytime I can come and help enlighten folks and learn from you as well, I'd love to do it. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. And a little bit more background on Jim. Jim is a long time, over 2 decades. I believe he's been a realtor in the Atlanta, Georgia market, as well as covering a lot of the Southeast. And I also want to pause and thank Jim. He is a military veteran of the United States Marines. So thank you so much for your service, Jim, to our country. And Jim is also a managing partner at Vested Interest Partners with Keller Williams Realty of First Atlanta. So thank you so much again, Jim. We really appreciate you sharing some of your knowledge with us today.
Sure thing. My pleasure. And I wanted to jump in and just, kind of address that hot button issue that everybody's talking about. When is the bubble going to burst? And that of course, assumes that there is a bubble and that's going to burst at some time. And all I can tell you is there really isn't one. There is no bubble and it's not going to burst. And I want to tell you why. It's because we've been through this bubble bursting for real about 13 years ago.
Right.
A bubble had definitely formed between 2005 and 2008. And then in 2007, 8, things started to fall apart. And boy, they really fell apart after that. In 2011 is when we can look back and see the bottom definitely happened in most of the markets, although some of them didn't really even see a bottom until later in 2012, maybe even 13. And that's just not the case this time. The things, and I want to run through a couple of, let me share a screen with you and kind of talk about some of the things that led to my saying this. And so I'll pop up my screen here real quick. And this is kind of more to the overall thing. When you have a void of information, emotion tends to drive decision making. And I think that folks get information from all kinds of sources. And when you look at the news media, it's a business just like any other business, and their product is selling news. It's selling information, whether that information is right or not. I mean, it's just like a publisher of books. The book may be fiction, and but their job is still to sell books, and so the fiction may be entertaining or whatever. But my point is the media is out to sell a product, and their product is to get your attention. And once it has your attention, it can then throw in some advertisements here and there and sell other products and get people to pay them for doing so, right? That's how the news media business works, more or less. Right. And so we read sensational headlines and we get drawn in to stories. And once you really dig in, you kind of see what the stories really are. And that's what we're going to do today, is peel back the onion a little bit.
Love that quote, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very
So we'll take a look at year over year appreciation percentages and what we've seen on a monthly basis. So January 2021 over January 2020, there was a 10% year over year price appreciation here in the United States, generally speaking. And that's pretty, that's really strong, right? Well, in February, it was even higher and higher still each month up through May. Now that's the best point at which we have all that data. Until now, we've got June and even some July numbers, which we're going to get into in a few moments. But the housing bubble really comes down to risky loans and where we were 13 years ago was a plethora of risky loans had been made. And today, you can look at what Dr. Frank Nodaft of the CoreLogic organization says. He's the chief economist there, and he says there are marked differences in today's run up in prices compared to 2005, which was a bubble fueled by risky loans and lenient underwriting. Today, loans with high risk features are absent, and mortgage underwriting is prudent. And it's true. I was a real estate professional back in that time period as well, and I can tell you things are very different today. You used to be able to basically you get a mortgage loan if you could fog a mirror, is how we
Yeah.
put it. And
Well,
now you actually have to have decent credit, and that, and along with a good debt to income ratio, and show that you can service that debt. And so we look back in 2006, there were $376 billion worth of mortgages originated to people with a credit score of less than 620. And credit score of less than 620, not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but that's indicates some serious credit issues. It generally indicates that somebody is late right now on a payment, or has been very recently, more than 30 days late on a credit reporting account of some kind. And it indicates that folks don't have the money to pay the bills that they've accumulated. And so that's an awful lot of mortgage originations back in 2006 to folks that don't have that 620 credit score. In 2020, only 74 billion. I mean, we're talking about 1/5 maybe of that. So there's a whole lot less mortgages being made to folks that have indicators of high risk in terms of their credit score. And so we look at what Harvard University said recently. Conditions today are quite different than in the early 2000s, particularly in terms of credit availability. It also points out the current climb in house prices instead reflects strong demand amid tight supply, helped along by record low interest rates. That's basically what we're looking at, folks. It's high demand, extraordinary demand, excessive buyer demand, if you will, along with and probably a historically tight supply. And I have a slide that I'm going to show you here in a little bit, which kind of helps illustrate why we have such a slide. I really kind of want to jump over this because I know we're crunched for time this morning. So I'm going to skip over the historical data for mortgage credit availability index. But when we look at mortgage debt and affordability, back in 2007, the fourth quarter, 7.21% was the household debt service ratio for mortgages as a percentage of disposable personal income. Today, it's less than half of that. And so again, 2007 bubble, today, no bubble, no reason for it. Mark Fleming, the chief economist of First American, has a quote here. And basically at the end of the day, he says, many find it hard to believe, but housing is actually undervalued in most markets, even today. And the gap between the house buying power and sale prices indicate that there's room for further growth in the house prices in the months to come. So that's good news for home buyers and sellers. Well, home buyers, as long as they buy now, right? And so when we look back at the housing affordability index historically, all the way from 1990, you can see that according to the National Association of Realtors in 2021, we're kind of sitting, we're kind of high up there, and yet we're not in an excessive affordability issue. There are clearly plenty of buyers finding the homes that are out there are affordable for now. However, it is tight. It is tight, and it's getting a little bit worse. Affordability does continue to decrease. So you can see we're kind of getting into those red numbers as you get into April and May. as affordability continues to decrease. So is there a housing bubble? Absolutely not. It's a supply and demand issue, as I talked about. And Sam Cater, the VP and chief economist of Freddie Mac, which is one of the big government sponsored enterprises that makes mortgage loans at the end of the day, or buys mortgage loans and repackages them for the secondary market and whatnot. The main driver of the housing shortfall has been the long-term decline in the construction of single-family homes. See, back in 2002, 3, 4, and 5, those were consecutive years where the most homes ever had been built and sold year after year. So it was the highest in 2002 until 2003, until 2004, until 2005. And then in 6, it was kind of like somebody pounding on a turntable and skipping the record a little bit. There was a little bit of a hiccup there in the market back then in 06. And then obviously in 07, things really started to drop off. And in terms of the single family housing units completed, when we look at that, we can see that the average annual units completed are somewhere, gosh, I don't even have a number on that scale, but you can see that we've been below that 50-year average in terms of annual units completed for 13 consecutive years, which is stunning considering our population growth going on at the same time. Simply, we are not producing enough housing for all the people that need housing. And that's why we are where we are. And as long as that continues, we're going to have price increases and still, tight inventory. And yeah, there will be buyers that fall out of the market because of the pricing for sure. But when you have interest rates where they are, gosh, it almost makes no sense to pay rent right now, unless you plan on moving again pretty soon, that kind of thing. So any questions on that whole issue?
Okay, what you just said, you said it doesn't make sense to pay rent right now, meaning that people should be buying houses.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't want that to be misconstrued as you shouldn't pay your rent if you have a lease.
Oh, I actually, okay, that's one way to interpret it, but I actually didn't interpret it that way. But it seemed a little bit of a contradiction that there's no inventory, right? That people can't buy a house, right? Because the inventory is so low. So maybe people might be, I guess, maybe stuck in a rental situation because maybe they've put an offer on dozens of houses and they've gone into bidding wars and cash buyers come in and swoop them up. So that's kind of what's going on, right?
Sure. And if that's the case, obviously, I think if you can't get hold of a home to purchase, then yes, of course, it makes sense to rent. There's really nothing else to do. And so I obviously I don't mean that, but if you have the opportunity to buy, it's really as good a time now as it's been. Sure, there's that Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is today.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, to your credit, it's the rent versus buy. It's obviously a lot cheaper right now to buy if you have the opportunity to buy because the interest rates are so low, and the rental market is. I know here in Atlanta where we live, Jim, that I know the rental markets are different everywhere depending on where you are in the country, but the rental rates are crazy high right now. I mean, you can in some cases buy a home and your mortgage would be half what your rental rate would be. It's that big of a disparity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just experienced it myself firsthand. We purchased a home. We sold a home last summer and purchased, and then we rented a home while we were going to build another one. That's a whole nother story. And we can talk about that at some other time, but that the costs went through the roof and builder availability got really tight. We got uncomfortable with it and decided not to build. But in the meantime, we had rented this place and we didn't want to continue renting because of where home prices are going, because of how quickly they're appreciating. And because of how expensive it was to actually rent and to get nothing for it. So we decided to buy a house that we could move into at the end of our lease. And so we've kind of experienced all of it, all in the last year. And, the growth in rental prices, it's gone through the roof as well. And it just doesn't make sense. We bought a place that's 2,700 square feet for, $275,000. And we could rent a place that's about 1,700 square feet for somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,850 a month versus the $1,388 a month that we'll be paying on our mortgage. And that includes taxes and insurance.
Yeah. So
Which incidentally, by the way, a lot of folks who rent, they think, oh, well, we rent and we don't have to pay taxes and we don't have to pay insurance and we don't have to pay home maintenance and that kind of thing. And, I think you might want to take a look under the hood and actually see what you're paying for when you're renting.
It's 13 hours.
Oh man, I'm sorry about that little clip.
Sorry. Yeah, that's true. That's true. You gotta kind of itemize everything out, and you can get a real good side by side comparison of all the expenses. But now with, I don't know, it seems like the interest rates are still hovering around 2%, depending on if you get a 15-year or a 30-year or however many years you want to get. But
yeah,
it's
2.25. I've seen for the 15 recently, and 2.75 to 3 is kind of what I'm seeing in the 30-year right now. Of course, that can change on a daily basis. It can go up, it can go down. So
gotcha. Okay, what else you got here on your presentation?
The only other thing that I really wanted to point out, I wanted to get into forbearance a little bit. There's been some, there are thoughts of, oh, there's a looming foreclosure crisis. And so that's probably what people think is going to lead to a housing bubble, if nothing else does, right? And so when we take a look at forbearance, back when the crisis, and I will say there was maybe a forbearance crisis back when the crisis supposedly started, when the headlines started coming out about there being a forbearance crisis. The original projection was that 30% of all mortgages would be entering into a forbearance agreement to where they didn't have to pay their mortgage for some period of time and work something out with the lender. Well, the reality is that the original forbearance percent was nowhere near the projections, and it's been cut more than half since then. It was actually topped out at less than 8.5% of mortgages in May of 2020, and today in August of 2021, it's about 3.5%. So that's what's really going on. And when you look at the number of mortgages that are in active forbearance back in the end of May of 2020, there were 4.76 million mortgages that were in an active forbearance agreement. And today it's only at about 1.86 million. So and of that, I should point out, it's not like there were a ton of foreclosures. 44% of those forbearance agreements ended when they were paid in full, and those folks are just going on down the road, no problem. Another 39% worked out a repayment plan. And so really what you're looking at there is about 84% of all those mortgages have come out of the forbearance issue. They're not going to be foreclosed on. There's been an agreement. Everything is kind of good to go one way or the other. And then about 17% were left in some modicum of trouble, some kind of, they either have no loss mitigation plan or they are, going into a short sale situation, a deed in lieu of foreclosure, something like that. And so we'll take a quick look. The Wall Street Journal even pointed out how in between 2006 and 14, about 9.3 million households went through foreclosure, gave up their home to a lender, or sold in a distressed sale. And today, you saw the 1.86 million that are still in a forbearance agreement. Of those, 90% of those, it's my understanding, have 10% or more equity in their home, meaning they may have a forbearance agreement because they're suffering through a job loss. And my heart goes out to them. And I'm not here to belittle anyone's situation. I feel terrible for not only the 9.3 million people, that had to deal with foreclosures back between 06 and 14, but that are going through it today. And for whatever reasons, our hearts go out to them for sure. But the fact of the matter is, if 1.5 million of those people have 10% plus equity in their homes, they have something that they can work with. They have no reason at the end of the day to be foreclosed on. They could get out of it without a foreclosure. And so therefore, the likelihood of us having a foreclosure crisis again is about 0%. And that's from one of the experts in the field, Ivy Zellman. And you can let me quote that as well. You can make it a quote of Jim Martell if you want to. And that's kind of where we are. So here are some more sensational headlines.
Yeah,
We're not going to really get into them, but it's just kind of an illustration of what's going on out there. It's there to grab your attention and frankly, to steal your time. And of course, we know that the negative sells, and that's why you see some of the things that you see out there.
Yeah. I love following all this stuff. And home sales drop in June. Well, that's probably because there's no inventory. It's
right.
That's the media. They'll, like you said, they sensationalize. It's real interesting that we talked about the whole bubble, because I got my YouTube channel, so I follow all these people on YouTube, these personal finance channels, and this is one of the trending topics on YouTube is this, when is the bubble's going to burst, the housing, market bubble, it's going to crash, it's going to burst, it's coming.
Right.
And you're saying the otherwise, and you just presented a lot of really good evidence and documentation to prove otherwise. And actually, that was one of the things I was going to ask you, Jim, but you already did it. Great minds think alike. I was going to ask you to compare the previous, which the great, what do they call it? The Great Recession.
Great Recession.
Yeah, the real estate, 08, 07, 08, when everything crashed with the real estate market. What is the side-by-side comparison of then versus now, which you did a great job of just presenting that. I liked your example of anyone who had, what was it, breath on a mirror?
Could fog a mirror. Yeah.
Fog a mirror. Yeah. The one that I liked was anyone with a pulse can get a home mortgage loan. So that's how
Absolutely.
it was. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you really go back and peel that onion a little bit, you might find that a lot of people that couldn't fog a mirror actually somehow got loans. There was a lot of crazy stuff going on between and everybody. There were bad folks in every level of the job.
That's right. Every level of it. And of course, a situation like that, it is going to crash eventually. It's going to catch up. So this time doesn't really see, it's a little different. So it's
not really there. The data just doesn't support a foreclosure crisis coming. It doesn't support a housing bubble bursting. It's August. If you come out and you throw a headline out there that says, oh, sales are down, 20% in August, guys, how many people have kids that are going back into school? They spent their last week of July on that last minute vacation,
right,
and then on school shopping. They're not out looking for houses. Of course, there's going to be a dip at the end of July and into August when, it's just seasonal. It's regular.
Right. That's true.
But
that is true.
It's going to be preyed upon by the folks who want you to point and click at their website, which looks like the housing boom is officially over. What a ridiculous statement.
I'm not sure how you can make that statement until the interest rates change, because as long as those interest rates stay so low, I would expect it to be the same. Like I would expect people to, it incentivizes buying tremendously when you could, like you said, you could get a potentially an interest rate in the twos.
Absolutely.
And I remember, Jim, I'm so old that I'm celebrating 20 years of buying my condo. in 2001. And I'm telling all my neighbors who are first time buyers in here that are, just out of college, 22-year-olds, 25-year-olds, I'm telling them how when I bought my condo, I paid almost an 8% interest. I want to say it was like a 7.75, so just under an 8. And this one girl I was telling, she almost fainted. She's like, what? I go, yeah, that's how it used to be. So times have really changed, and it's great. It's great for people. You save, tens if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on interest with them so low. So
Gosh,
it's really,
and back
really
in
great.
back in the late 70s, early 80s, maybe when I was getting to the double digit number of years, and maybe you were just being born, I don't know. We are, there were rates that hit 20+% on interest
Yeah.
rate.
Yeah, I remember that. Those were, I think, the Jimmy Carter years. I remember learning about in history class in school.
Oh, yeah.
I think that when Jimmy Carter was president, it was the highest. I remember it being like 18-19%. So from what I learned and studied.
Yeah, and they slid into the Reagan years also,
Yeah.
to be fair,
Yeah.
and there were some Fed monetary policies that had to, a large effect on those kinds of things. So
Very interesting. Any final thoughts as we wrap up with Jim Martell, expert, longtime realtor here in the Atlanta market? We appreciate the presentation on the current state of the real estate market and the potential bubble. Is it going to burst? There is no bubble. So Jim's saying no bubble. It's not going to happen. It's just maybe a little fear and panic that the media is trying to put into you. But any final thoughts, Jim, as we close up?
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to get on here and speak with you and to the folks who follow you. The more I just love getting good information out there, and I view learning as one of my superpowers. And so if I can take my superpower of learning and help others learn, that puts me on the path to mastery, and that's where I want to be. And so I thank you for the opportunity to get the word out.
That's great, man. Hey, and if Jim, if you don't mind, go ahead and close out of your presentation, and then we can put the graphics on the screen of where people can find you or contact you if they want to reach out to you for your services. Like I said, Jim serves the Atlanta market, but he also serves a lot of the Southeast, the surrounding Southeast markets as well. So Jim, let people know how can they connect with you if they want to reach out.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you can certainly jump on my website, which should be on the screen here. It's www.thevip.group. VIP for Vested Interest Partners. That's my group at Keller Williams First Atlanta. First Atlanta is just one brokerage of many in the southeastern United States, and out of many hundreds that are across the nation and the globe. If we can't help you sell, buy, or invest in real estate, then we can certainly get you in touch with someone who can, and we would be honored to do so. And just so you know, we're located here in Atlanta, Georgia. We cover all of North Georgia currently. The Vested Interest Partners Group does, and then we're also adding the upstate of South Carolina now, with a position on Lake Hartwell and going into Anderson and Greenville and eventually up to Charlotte. And you'll see. Keep an eye on us. We're growing.
Sounds good. And for anyone that wants to hear, we're doing a series of these talks with Jim, myself, just covering the whole gambit of what's going on in the real estate market and different topics. Our renovations worth it. We've got a whole series going. So if you want to learn more or watch some more of the videos with Jim, there's actually a playlist on my channel. You can check it out below. And it's just simply titled Jim Martell Realtor Interviews, I think is the official name. But you can go to the playlist and you can watch all the videos with Jim and learn more about what's going on in the wide world of real estate. So thanks again, Jim, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
And just once again, Jason Brown saying thanks so much for watching. Appreciate your support. And to remember that it's not the amount of money you make, it's the margin that matters the most. We'll see you next time.
Take care.